So I did my presentation on Sophia Germain, also known as M. LeBlanc. She was born in Paris on April 1st, 1776, and she died also in Paris, June 27th, 1831. And during this time, there was the French Revolution was going on, so there was a lot of war and riots, and it was really not a good place for people to be going out in public, for children like herself to be playing outside. So for most of her childhood, she actually had to stay inside. She was born to Ambroise Francis, who was a prosperous silk merchant, and Mary Magdalene, who was her mother. And because her father was a prosperous silk merchant, and the timings of the French Revolution and the government was falling, her house actually became a meeting place for those seeking liberal reforms and new government policies. So she grew up surrounded by that environment of political and philosophical discussions and decisions being made. And since the revolution was going on, she obviously had to stay inside, so she spent a lot of her time reading books. And she actually read the story of how Archimedes died, and that actually influenced her to become a mathematician. So then she started to read other books. She started teaching herself French and Latin so she could more understand these books. And she ended up reading Euler and Newton at night because it wasn't acceptable for women to be educated, so it really wasn't acceptable for her to be seen reading in the daylight. So there's a quote that says, "She read Newton and Euler at night while wrapped in blankets as her parents slept. They had taken away her fire, her light, and her clothes in an attempt to force her away from her books." So this just shows how women really were not supposed to be educated, and if you did want to be educated, you'd have to go to extreme measures to do so, and even then it still wasn't a good thing to do. But she did it anyways. She actually started attending Joseph Louis Lagrange's lectures at a college, and she actually attended under the pseudonym of M. LeBlanc, and she would start submitting papers to his class, and they were of really high quality and high intelligence, even that he took notice, and he tried to find the author, and when he found out it was her, the fact that she was a woman, it didn't affect him, and he actually took her under her wing, and he became her sponsor. And so for over the next couple years, they would collaborate and they would share ideas, and he actually published a lot of her ideas. The second edition of his theory book is mostly her ideas because they had the time to collaborate and share the ideas. And then she started coming in contact with Carl Friedrich Gauss, and this was over a 5-year period. They would send letters, and she would propose number theory ideas, and he would respond on whether or not he liked them or not, if they were scientifically correct. And he actually was enthused about them. He would brag about them to his coworkers, and then eventually he found out that she was a woman, and that didn't change his opinion of her. If anything, he increased his respect for her because she was a woman having to live in a man's world of math. So she worked on Fermat's last theorem for a long time. This is one of her main accomplishments, as well as elasticity and number theory. Fermat's last theorem says, n, as long as n is greater than 2, x to the n plus y to the n cannot equal z to the n. She worked on this for years, and it's actually also called Germain's theorem because of how much work she did on it. And so that is one of her biggest accomplishments. The other one was elasticity. There was a problem proposed. It said, formulate a mathematical theory of elastic surfaces and indicate just how it agrees with empirical evidence. So she actually tried to solve this problem 3 times. The first time, it wasn't right. They didn't like it or anything. The second time, she had actually prepared with Lagrange. They shared some ideas. She tried to come up with new ideas, and they still didn't get it because the math just wasn't discovered at that time. They had to make loopholes and assumptions that just were not discovered. So then the third time she tried it, she actually got the medal. She got the prize, but she didn't really like it because she didn't think the judges really respected her as a woman. She didn't think that they just saw how much hard work she put into it, and so it was kind of a bittersweet thing for her. So then she also tried to continue to write papers on elasticity and number theory, but a lot of them were not published because she was a woman, and so if there was something wrong with them, the men wouldn't even tell her. They would just make her have to find out what happened to it, what was wrong with it, and so because of that, a lot of her papers did not get published. So her impact on future mathematicians was, her biggest one was Ernst Kummer. He was the person who carried on her work of Fermat's last theorem in 1840. He took all the work she had done, and with the new mathematical discoveries, he expanded it, and it is what it is today, because the future mathematicians worked on that, and it just had a big impact. She also influenced the way future mathematicians approached elasticity and number theory because of those few articles that did get published. They did make a huge impact.